"We need the room, Lena, for the baby's future." My son's words weren't a request. They were a verdict, delivered across the granite island I'd bought and installed for them. "You understand, it's just time. We've already packed for you." The rain that night was a cold, brutal downpour that soaked through my winter coat before David even finished shoving my single suitcase into the trunk of the Uber. I stood on the curb, watching the silhouette of my daughter-in-law Chloe pull the living room curtain shut with a sharp, final tug. The Uber's headlights made the rain look like 1,000 falling needles. 7 months of unpaid babysitting, of cooking their meals, of grieving my husband in the silent confines of their guest room, all reduced to a 30-second eviction. That was January 12th. The car reeked of cheap Pine air freshener and someone else's regret, but as we pulled away from the curb, my fingers closed around the one thing they'd forgotten I had: a single, tarnished key on a faded leather fob, the key to Unit B17. They thought they were throwing away a tired, used-up old woman. They had no idea they were discarding a $3.75 million fortune. If you're watching this from a place where you feel small, or unseen, or like your own family doesn't value you, lean in close. My name is Lena Petrova, and at 68 years old, I was tossed out by my own son with a suitcase and a secret. This is how that secret didn't just build a new life, it built an empire that shamed them into silence. The Uber didn't take me to a motel. I directed the driver to a bleak, fluorescent-lit storage facility on the industrial edge of town. The Metro Safe Storage on 124th Avenue. The night manager, a kid with a lip ring and the tired eyes of someone who's seen too much, barely glanced up as I recited the unit number. "Haven't seen you in a while," he mumbled. The metal roll-up door of B17 screamed like a banshee as I heaved it open. Inside, shrouded in dusty white sheets, wasn't just my past, it was my revenge. Amidst the old furniture and boxes of memories was one specific, unmarked cardboard box. Inside, carefully wrapped in my husband Alex's old wool sweaters that still smelled faintly of his cologne, was his life's true work. Not his carpentry tools, but his quiet, secret passion. For 40 years, Alex had been a master luthier, a ghost artist crafting exquisite, custom acoustic guitars for collectors who knew his name but never his face. This box contained his final, unfinished masterpiece, a Brazilian rosewood guitar body on, his priceless collection of vintage tonewoods, pieces of aged spruce, rare koa wood, and a small, miraculous block of pre-1969 Brazilian rosewood he traded for in 1988, a piece worth more than our first house. Taped to the inside flap was his typewritten inventory list, the numbers making my heart stop. Asterisk lot number 12, Brazilian rosewood 4.2 pounds, acquired 1988 EST, market value $18,500 plus. Lot number 15, Adirondack spruce 3.1 pounds, $7,200 plus. Asterisk, I sank onto a dusty armchair, the reality of my situation crashing down. I had $920 in my checking account, no income, and a box of wood worth a fortune to the right people. But how does a retired school librarian sell something so rare? The humiliation of being cast out curdled into a cold, granite-hard resolve. David and Chloe saw me as obsolete. I was about to show them that vintage wood, like a vintage woman, only appreciates in value when placed in the right hands. The first 3 weeks were a special kind of hell. I rented the cheapest studio apartment I could find, a bleak little box that constantly smelled of fried grease and despair. The rent was $1,150 a month, a figure that made me physically ill to write on the check. I spent my days at the public library, using their clunky computers to fall down a rabbit hole of guitar forums, vintage instrument auctions, and luthier supply networks. I learned the language: scale, length, tone, figuring. I discovered my husband's stash wasn't just valuable, it was the stuff of legend. The Precite's Brazilian rosewood was the holy grail, virtually irreplaceable. My first attempt to sell a small piece of spruce online was a disaster. I was lowballed by a dozen vultures who smelled my desperation through the screen. I wasn't just a novice, I was a lamb heading for slaughter. I needed a guide, an ally. That's when I walked into the Fretboard, a high-end guitar shop that felt like a museum. The air was thick with the scent of lemon oil and old money. A man with kind eyes and sawdust in his graying beard looked up from the counter. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "I hope so," I said, my voice steadier than my trembling hands. I opened my bag and showed him a small, meticulously sanded sample of the rosewood. "My late husband was a I'm his widow. I have more of this," His name was Elias. He picked up the wood, his fingers long skilled, callous gently tracing the grain, as if reading a story. He held it to the light, then to his nose, inhaling the faint, sweet scent of the decades-old wood. He looked from the wood to me, his professional curiosity melting into something like awe. "Mrs. Petrova," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "do you have any idea what you're sitting on?" "I'm starting to," I replied, a spark of my old self igniting in my chest. Elias became my unlikely mentor. He didn't lowball me, he schooled me. He introduced me to his network world-renowned luthiers, obsessive collectors, the curators of the Musical Instrument Museum. He taught me to navigate the complex, often cutthroat world of high-end instrument sales. He saw not just the wood, but the story behind it, the love of a craftsman, the betrayal of a family, the fierce resilience of his widow. That story, he told me, was what would make it priceless. The first sale was a test. A single pound of the Adirondack spruce to a luthier in Vermont. The wire transfer hit my account 3 days later, $5,800. I sat on the floor of my studio, the receipt printed out in my hands, and I sobbed. It was more money than I'd seen it once in a decade. It wasn't just money, it was validation. It was a door cracking open. I didn't just sell the wood outright. With Elias's counsel, I got strategic. I commissioned a brilliant young luthier woman named Sophia, who Elias vouched for, to use Alex's unfinished guitar body and his best woods to complete his masterpiece. We would sell it as the Petrova, a one-of-a-kind instrument with a story that would make it the crown jewel of any collection. The project would take a year. In the meantime, I sold smaller pieces strategically, a few ounces at a time, never flooding the market, always letting the mystique of Alex's lost hoard drive the prices into the stratosphere. My life began to transform in quiet, profound ways. I moved out of the stinking studio and into a clean, sun-drenched one-bedroom with a balcony that looked out at trees, not a brick wall. I bought myself a new pair of boots that didn't have worn-down heels. I started seeing a therapist, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to surgically remove the shrapnel of grief and betrayal so I could step into my new life without limping. And of course, David and Chloe found out. The call came on a Sunday morning. It was David's voice, strained, trying to sound casual. "Mom, hey, just checking in. Heard you moved." "I did," I said, sipping my coffee, watching the sunlight dance on my balcony railing. "That's great. Listen, things have been tight here. The baby's daycare costs are insane. We were wondering, Dad's old tools, that weird wood he had in the garage, is any of that still around? Maybe we could sell it, help out a bit." The audacity was a physical blow. They'd thrown me out and now were circling back like vultures for the scraps. "It's handled, David," I said, my voice colder than I knew it could be. "Don't worry about it." I hung up, my heart hammering a war drum in my chest. The battle lines were drawn. The auction of the Petrova was held at a sleek gallery in New York. Elias and Sophia came with me. I wore a simple, elegant black dress. The guitar, under a soft spotlight, was so beautiful it hurt to look at. It wasn't just an instrument. It was Alex's soul, given voice by Sophia's hands and my relentless will. The bidding started at $50,000. It climbed in a dizzying frenzy: $75,000, $100,000, $150,000. The final hammer price, from a private collector in Tokyo, was $210,000. The sound of that gavel was the sound of my old life shattering forever. The money changed everything, but not in the way I'd first thought. It wasn't about the number in my bank account, which now sat at a cool $1.4 million. It was about the terrifying, exhilarating freedom. I wasn't just safe, I was powerful. I knew exactly what my final move had to be. I didn't call just any realtor. I called Brenda, the woman who had sold David and Chloe their house. Her curiosity was a living thing on the other end of the line. "Lena, what a surprise. How are you? How's David?" "I'm looking to buy, Brenda," I said, my voice flat and calm. "I understand 14 Crestview Ridge is about to come on the market." The silence was absolute. Crestview Ridge was the most exclusive, gated enclave in the county. The house was a modernist masterpiece of glass and steel, perched on a cliffside with heart-stopping ocean views. It was the house David and Chloe pointed to every single time we drove past, their voices dripping with a covetous longing they could never, ever afford. The listing price was $3.75 million. "Yes, it is," Brenda stammered. "Lena, it's a significant property. The down payment alone, I'll be paying cash." I said, the words feeling like poetry. I'd like to see it today. The tour was surreal. Brenda's demeanor was a hilarious mix of confusion, shock, and sycophantic glee. The house was all soaring ceilings, an infinity pool that melted into the horizon, and walls of glass framing the endless Pacific. It was everything they had ever wanted and everything they had told me I could never have. I made a full-price cash offer on the spot. The sellers, desperate for a quick close, accepted within 6 hours. The news broke in the real estate section of the local paper. Record cash sale for Crestview Ridge, cliffhanger. I knew they'd see it. I waited. The doorbell rang at 10:03 a.m. on a Saturday. I saw them on the high-def monitor, David pale and sweating in a too-tight polo shirt, Chloe wearing a frantic painted-on smile and holding a sad-looking bakery box, a peace offering for the woman they'd sent away in the rain. I made them wait. I let them stand on the wrong side of my massive oak door, in the shadow of the home they could only ever fantasize about. When I finally opened it, I didn't speak. I just let the silent, soaring grandeur of the foyer speak for me. Mom, David breathed, his eyes wide, trying to take in the vastness, the art, the light. This is unexpected, I offered, my voice even. Chloe thrust the box at me. We brought pastries. We thought we could talk as a family. We've missed you. Her voice was shrill, the sweetness a thin veneer over sheer panic. Come in, I said, my tone flat. Since you're so interested in a family reunion, all of a sudden, I led them on a slow, silent tour. I watched their faces as they took in the panoramic views, the chef's kitchen with its marble islands, the gallery walls. The envy was a thick, sour smell in the air. Finally, in the living room, Chloe broke. Lena, this is incredible. Just amazing. And so much space for just one person. It must get lonely. She let the word hang in the air, oily and suggestive. You know, the basement here is a full apartment, in-law suite, separate entrance. We were thinking, with the market the way it is, maybe we could. I didn't let her finish. You could what, Chloe? Move in, pool our resources. Isn't that what families do? I threw her own words from my last day in her house right back at her. David flinched. Mom, please, we know we made mistakes. We were stressed. The baby. You weren't stressed, I said, my voice quiet but so sharp it could have cut glass. You were cruel. You saw me as a used-up resource, and you disposed of me. The only difference now is that you've audited my worth and found me to be a valuable asset. You don't want a mother. You want a ATM. That's not true, David insisted, but his eyes fled to the floor, unable to meet mine. Isn't it? Let me be perfectly clear. You will not live in my house. You will not manage my money. You will not have a key. You are welcome to visit, as guests, when and if I invite you. The relationship we have from this moment forward will be built on my terms, on mutual respect, not your financial desperation. Chloe's face hardened, the mask finally shattering. You'd choose to live in this giant house all alone rather than help your own son. I looked from her furious, twisted face to my son's ashamed, weak one, and I felt not anger, but a profound, settling peace. Yes, I said, the word simple and final. I choose me. I walked them to the door. They left in a stunned, silent shame, the pathetic bakery box abandoned on my cold marble counter. I stood in the breathtaking quiet of my home, the vast, endless ocean stretching out before me. I had loved my son. I had ached to be a grandmother. That loss would always be a scar. But some scars aren't just reminders of the wound. They are proof you survived it. They had given me the gift of ruthless independence. I had taken their rejection and built a cathedral from it. The best revenge isn't living well. It's living unchained.